We see lots of regulations and rules, from FINRA, the SEC, bogging down advisors' practices. And it's the number one complaint amongst Wall Street advisors is the amount of surveillance and oversight and compliance. You alerted me to one of the most outrageous and significant settlements that affect the mass of financial advisors like I've never known. And I don't want to be alarmist, but this is really, really huge. And it affects every single major advisor in the business, particularly the big ones at Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Securities, everyone. So the SEC, if you don't mind, I read a little bit, but the SEC charged large banks and brokerage firms with the largest violation of direct cell phone communications between their entire sales force and the management of them with the clients of the firms. And each of these major firms settled, but more importantly, it's now the firms are dictating that they must look and evaluate all correspondence on these electronic devices of all their employees, particularly their financial advisors with their clients going back 2 years. And if there's violations that is highly likely the case, which lead to sanctions, firings, and penalties. And so today I have Brian Neville and Matt Platt from Lax and Neville, one of the most distinguished attorneys, securities attorneys in the nation, that could put a little bit of color on what advisors should expect, how they should prepare themselves for this bombshell evaluation of their private cell phone devices.
Hey, Roger. Thanks for having us on. I'll start off and hand it over to Matt in a moment. But, we're starting to get phone calls from registered reps that were being investigated for, communicating with clients on messaging services, whether it was WhatsApp during COVID or, work from home conditions. Firms implemented all different types of procedures. Some firms started handing out firm-issued cell phones. Merrill Lynch has these kind of now infamous, famous red phones, and it tracks text messaging and certain things. And other firms have done other things. But initially, I think what we were all saying was text messaging would come to the attention of someone in compliance, and they would request these. But this settlement, I think, is really unprecedented in some important ways. One of which is just the sheer dollar amount, right? Like virtually $2 billion, hundreds of million for 8 or 9 major firms, mid-sized firms with tens of millions of dollars, and smaller firms are all coming next. And as part of the settlement, if advisors ever wanted to go and read them, just go to FINRA's website and look at the acceptance, waiver, and consents of each of these large firms. And part of what they're going to be required to do is review their own policies and procedures, hire compliance consultants, review employee communications on personal devices. And it's not really even limited to just to clients, Roger, which is somewhat amazing. If you're communicating with someone on your team about a client and it's on a text message, you could be in for trouble. And, there's several AWCs I'll let Matt talk about, but one of the things that leapt out at me, and I think I probably was more informed about this than most, is, a lot of advisors have been trained, if you're running 10 minutes late to meet someone and you shoot them a text, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late, that would have been thought of as non-substantive and non-violative conduct. But if you speak to a compliance officer at any major firm right now, they'll say, no, you can't even do that. You can't even give someone the courtesy of letting them know you're running late in a text message. So Matt, why don't you talk about some of the acceptance waiver and consents that have specifically come out that advisors should be knowledgeable about?
Yeah, so thank you, and I appreciate being on today, Roger. Thank you. So kind of looking at the AWCs, the settlements with FINRA, quite often you see text messaging as one of the violations that are alleged. And it'll go along with outside business activities or selling away or whatever else. But what we are starting to see are text-only settlements, and in the last couple months, there have been a couple, at least that are pretty severe. 30 days and a $10,000 fine in one situation, and 45-day suspension and a $7,500 fine in another one, and that's just in the last couple months. So certainly, the regulators are continuing to look at this, and the firms are as well. And I think what we'll see is that it's going to be kind of a snowball effect. As the firms have undertaken this process of determining what violations there have been, what records haven't been maintained, it's going to kind of mushroom. If they look at one financial advisor and they see text messages with a supervisor and two sales assistants, they're next going to go to the supervisor and two sales assistants, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow. It really does look like it's going to be the next couple of years of intensive and extensive reviews of text messages to see how many were not properly maintained by the firms, to ingest them. And then the real question for financial advisors is what flows from that? What are the penalties? The settlements with the SEC, all of them are identical and require each of the firms to report to FINRA whatever that discipline is. And they have a list that includes, but not limited to, written warnings, loss of any pay, bonus, or incentive compensation, or termination of employment. So, although you may hear from the compliance department or the legal team who's investigating this that all they want to do is ingest these text messages into their books and records, it's a question mark what's going to happen there. It sounds like it could very well be much more serious than just getting the text messages on their system.
So physically, how are they going to do this? I mean, you've got, let's just take Merrill, for instance, right? You have 11,000 advisors. What do they do? Hand over your cell phones, go to, or they get from Verizon, or how do you know your cell phone is being, evaluated? What do you do?
I mean, Roger, let me jump in first on that and say, we don't know what every firm is going to be doing, but we know they have to do something because their settlement agreements with the SEC say that they have to do something. So they're going to have to develop a review process that is documented, and it could be something like random sampling. It could be something where a supervisor has to pick people that the supervisor thinks were the most likely to be texting with clients. And then you're going to get an email that says you have to provide your personal phone. This will not be your work issued phone. It'll be your personal phone, and you will have to provide it as a condition of your employment. Firms very well may hire outside counsel who will be dedicated to just representing the individuals who have to produce their phones. But these will be firms that have a mandate to probably handle thousands and thousands of these. So there's many ways these forensic firms do it, Roger. Some of them will overnight you a computer and walk you through plugging your phone into it and downloading the information. And then that advisor is going to have to decide, am I going to use the lawyer that the firm is hiring for me? Because what if I have questions about, 2 years ago during COVID, a client, texted me in a panic about their account and I answered it. Was that a terminable offense? And is the firm provided counsel going to advise you on what your plan B should be or your plan C should be? Should I be looking at other firms? If this is a terminable offense, should I even be cooperating? There's going to be so many questions. But I will tell you that, in my opinion, Roger, you will be the exception as opposed to the norm if you don't receive, as a financial advisor with a robust practice, some request to have your cell phone provided to a forensic expert to mirror in the next several months.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important point. It's not going to be the firm asking you to go through your text messages and just turn them over. It's going to be a forensic examination where they take a image of your entire phone and do targeted searches to identify those potential communications that were outside the firm's permitted methods of communicating. So the financial advisor will have to put together a list of all of their clients and their phone numbers so that these searches can be run. And like Brian was saying, that even if counsel is hired, if I would think that they're most likely to be looking to get through these efficiently and in a quick turnaround for the firm, which will probably mean the review is going to be putting text messages or other messages into two buckets. It's either business related or it's not business related. And what gets turned over is the business related text messages. So as Brian was saying, there's a lot of issues there that go beyond just getting your text messages, your business text messages turned over to the firm. What real analysis of those text messages would reveal is important to the financial advisor, and what the possible outcomes, depending on what's there, is something that you should be thinking about and wanting to have a lawyer consult with, as opposed to just getting your text messages turned over.
No question. So you're starting to get phone calls from advisors. And so what are they saying to you? My compliance officer came to me and they said they want to open up my phone. They called you and said, help.
Yeah, I mean, Roger, I would say actually the first thing they say is, how is it possible that my firm or a regulator has the right to request my personal phone, where I have some of the most personal and private aspects of my life on there, my photographs of my family, photographs of, whatever it is that I'm into privately, passwords. Every iPhone and Android phone now has a whole password thing. So if they mirror your phone, now you now have the passwords to every app or website that you regularly visit on your phone. Clients will often ask us, how is it possible that FINRA has the right to ask all this? FINRA routinely, through its power under Rule 8210, they can request a registered rep's personal tax returns, banking records at non-FINRA member firms. Their ability to request information is virtually unlimited. And because you are a registered representative, you agreed to this when you signed the Form U4 and joined the firm. Most people are shocked to learn that they don't have these various privacy rights. That all being said, Roger, what we then tend to say is, if you retain us, we will control the searches and protect your privacy by hiring the vendors directly ourselves, limiting the search terms and the targets of what is being searched to protect your privacy. And I think the volume of this is going to be unprecedented in the industry, and people, registered reps are going to think, should I go independent? Should I go RIA only? Like this level of invasion of my privacy is very disturbing, is what we keep hearing.
And it's going to be the other thing that makes it probably unprecedented is not just going to be financial advisors. It's going to be supervisors. It's going to be sales assistants. It's going to be, anyone within the firm is a potential target of this type of review.
And,
Yeah, so
Roger, you know from this business, just in the recruiting side alone, the most frequent mode of communication seems to be texting, because advisors are wary and don't want to use email, and recruiters, the internal recruiting teams at firms, seem to communicate that way routinely. So I don't think this is going to be limited to registered reps. I think this inquiry is going to go to people that work in recruiting at firms. They're going to be going to branch office managers, compliance managers, and there's going to be a lot of people who historically weren't the subject of these kind of supervisory reviews that are going to be getting these emails internally.
And one of the other things that the SEC settlement all said is that the penalties are to be handed down in a consistent across business lines and seniority levels. So from sales assistants all the way up, it needs to be across the board.
As I see it, this is the biggest scare I've ever heard of. It's pretty insane. I mean, what you have is the SEC and federal communication securities laws. I mean, this is law, and they view this information as they actually quote in their letter as sacrosanct, right? Information to them is sacrosanct, and any allegations of communications with clients outside the confines of their office, anything to do with clients, is like their material. It's kind of insane. So it probably begs, when this comes down, or as it is coming down, and as advisors get really, very concerned about it. And it looks like we've got a solid 2 years, at least, of inquiries and penalties and issues, which is, I guess, however you look at it, unfortunately, a big business for you guys. It begs why advisors might really start to say they're done and start their own independent RIA. Now, it doesn't alleviate themselves of the SEC, right? But they are governing themselves. They're looking at their own communications, right? And so it's a lot easier to govern your own firm's, cell phones, right? Communications. That's easy to manage and be careful and be compliant. But for an entire firm like Merrill or Morgan or UBS or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan to monitor every single advisor, and if you don't uphold the rules of the overall organization, you're in potential violation, potential firing of your firm. That's really big.
Yeah, Roger, I would like to end with this thought that if anyone who seriously values their registered representative license, and for most people, it is probably not thought of as their most valuable asset, but it is the income stream for the future of your career. If you get an email, if you get a friendly request from a branch office manager, someone that you are going to be subject to one of these reviews, and if they then suggest to you the old, oh, don't worry about it, just be honest, that's when you should be running the other direction and getting an independent counsel, because these settlements are not insubstantial. The firm is required to set up this review. And as Matt planted out, the sanctions that firms are going to give out run from, you could lose your BDA, you could lose your chairman's club, you could lose this. And that would just be for texting, I'm running 10 minutes late for lunch. If you have substantive discussions with clients about securities transactions, those aren't going to be the remedies that we predict. So hire independent counsel, hire someone that can help you with your plan B or your plan C, and make that an independent law firm that specializes in representing advisors and specializes in representing advisors in transition.
I'm sad to say that it's a pleasure speaking with you. And certainly there's going to be updates, and we look forward to getting back with you with updates. And anybody listening to this call, they'd be pleased to accept their calls and introduce you directly to Brian and Matt. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.